How to find and pitch your first B2B customers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut through the noise after you've exhausted your friends, family, and associates, which are the warm leads, people who know you and are going to take your call right up front. Eventually, you're going to have to go and do cold calls or approach organizations you've never talked to before or they've never heard about you before. I'm a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits, and most of my ventures have been in B2B. And I'm going to show you exactly how I got started, exactly what I said, all the tools that I use. Let me start off by saying founder-led sales is where you need to start. I know a lot of founders start a B2B business and they're a little scared, they're a little shy, but it's so important to do founder-led sales because it builds trust. Trust with your investors. In other words, if you're not willing to go out there and sell your business, then why would an investor trust you with their money? Also, it builds team trust. It shows your team, the people you're working with, or eventually you're going to work with, that you know how to drive sales and you're creating security and longevity in the company for future success. That's so important that they feel stable and they know that you've got their backs when it comes to generating the revenue as the founder. Finally, if you learn how to do founder-led sales, you're going to save so much money in the long run. I know way too many founders that don't want to do founder-led sales, and so what they do is they go hire salespeople or contract marketing firms and other companies to try and replace what they feel like they can't do or they're feeling weak in. And in the end, they just waste too much money paying someone else to figure out how to do sales when all you had to do was do it yourself and then show them how to do it and then let them take it to the next level. Before we continue, welcome back to my channel or welcome to my channel. My name is Ed Kang. Like I said, 7-time funded founder with 2 exits. I like to use media like this to help founders avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made. It's not to say you're not going to make mistakes, but I'm going to help you reduce the pain, suffering, and anxiety and try to make your life a little bit easier because it's hard enough as it is. Do the social media thing, like, comment, subscribe. It always helps out. Let's jump into the first step. Step 1, establish a qualified lead source. When I say lead source, I don't mean just Google or randomly spam a bunch of people on LinkedIn after doing a search in your local market. You want a qualified lead source. That means leads who you know fit into the type of business that you are trying to do. And how you tell that they're qualified leads is you look at what they do with their money versus what they say. When I was starting off my B2B business and I wanted to get in touch with people and I was doing like marketing tech and advertising and business growth strategies, I went to figure out who is actually spending the money, who has the budget to spend on me, because I know small businesses, many of them don't have budget and they'd be happy to talk to me, get a lot of free advice, but they're not qualified because eventually they cannot pay. They're not going to be good customers. So what I did is I went through my local magazine stand and I found the swankiest, glossiest magazine and I found out the advertising rates that were like $2,000 or $3,000 for an ad. And I said, if a business is spending money here in this magazine, they are a qualified lead. And so all I did was every time that magazine came out, I just went and I clipped out all the ads and I looked up the companies and I knew this is my qualified lead source. You can do the same thing by looking at company news or how many employees they have. Or are they spending money on employee retreats if you're trying to do something with their employees? There's so many ways. Have they sponsored other things, other events? What are they actually putting out as far as social media? There's so many ways you can find qualified lead sources where, most importantly, your customers, potential customers, are spending money. Remember, focus on what they do with their money, not what they say. A lot of people say they do a bunch of things, but they're not qualified. Next, you want to find a decision maker. Finding a decision maker is so important because so many times founders end up talking to someone who cannot make the decisions. They're not going to spend the money. And even though they may agree and love what you're trying to sell them, you're not going to get a sale. It's not going to work. They're not qualified. So you want to find the qualified decision maker. For example, in one of our startups, when we were trying to sell to teachers, we knew that teachers wanted to use our product. Our product solved a pain point for teachers. We fundamentally understood that they're not the ones that made the final decision on certain things like curriculum or tools that they use in the classroom. Although teachers had a certain amount of money they could spend, discretionary spending power, they weren't going to spend it on us. So we had to talk to teachers and find out who makes makes the decision, and it's usually a program director or principal, and therefore that became the decision maker. Now, how do you find out who the decision maker is? Well, I just pick up the phone and call. I've done this with huge companies, multi-million dollar, billion-dollar companies. I've just picked up the phone and I've looked through the directory and I've called someone and I just started a conversation. Usually I call admin or sales because they're trained to pick up your phone call. They might think it's a customer, or they might think that it's an important phone call that they have to take. So at least I'll get them on the phone. When I try to call someone higher up, like an executive decision maker, they usually just ignore the call if they don't recognize me on their caller ID or they don't recognize my name coming through. It's just not going to work. So I need to start a conversation somewhere. So I'll call the admin or I'll call sales and I'll just say, I don't want to sell you anything. I'm not here. I don't want to take up any of your time. I just was curious, who makes the decision on this? In my case of the advertising, I just called the front desk and I said, hey, I saw your ad in this magazine. It was a really nice ad. I wanted to know, not to bug you, who makes the decision on your advertising? And they're more than happy to give the name. Sometimes if they're a little reticent and they ask why, and I just said, oh, I just wanted to find out who's making the decision. Don't worry, I'm not going to bug them at all. Just need the name. You're going to find out that there are certain things that you can say that roll off the tongue, that you're comfortable with, that make them comfortable, that work in terms of getting the name sooner than later. Now, while I recognize that you could probably look this up on LinkedIn, sometimes that information isn't as transparent as you want it to. It's going to be important that you actually made a phone call because I'm going to show you how to use that reference when you follow up later. Let's go on to the next step. Step 3. You're going to send them a letter. Why not an email? Why not a LinkedIn friend request? Because a letter actually gets to them and they have to physically open it. A lot of times you can cut through the digital noise by sending something physical. I know one company, they're a B2B company, they're doing IT management and support, and what they did is they made a whole bunch of cards to send to the decision makers using construction paper like it was craft time. So the entire staff sat down and made these cards that looked like kids were drawing, and it was crafts, and they tried to draw as pretty picture as possible, and that physical card actually got to that decision maker's desk. I've done things such as send them like little boxes of treats and different things to actually get their attention because everybody's going to be curious and they're going to want to open a package. Now, like I said, through this whole thing, you're going to be testing. Sometimes you want to test handwritten packages, writing the physical address and the name of the person that you're trying to reach with pen on the envelope. Labels sometimes look like it's solicitation, so somebody's going to open them. But if it's a handwritten letter, it might seem it's important. Someone's sending personal correspondence, and therefore it's going to get to that person who's going to open up that package. What do you put in that package? Well, what you want to do is you want to get their attention, and you want to quantify their pain like a doctor. You know what a doctor does is they squeeze until it hurts, until you want to do something. You go to the doctor and you say, oh, I think something's wrong with me. And they say, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? And then you say, ow, that hurts. And then that is the way the doctor identifies the pain, but also gets you motivated to do something about it. You're going to say, hey, I see that you're experiencing pain and I've quantified it for you. In the case of what I did, when I sent these packages to people who were making the advertising decisions, I literally rated their advertising. I red penned their advertising and I showed them how their advertising was going to fail. Pretty much put it right out there, and you can imagine the response that I would get. It was pretty offensive to some people, but other people really appreciated me quantifying what they were doing in their advertising and whether, as an expert, I thought it was going to work or not. I went so far as sometimes, and I don't always recommend this, but I tried around where I attached a dollar lottery ticket to the letter of their ad, all marked up, and I said, it'd be better for you to spend the money that you spent on this ad on dollar lottery tickets because you'll probably get a better ROI. Next is you call to follow up. You call them, and what you're doing is you're picking up the phone and you're calling, and you've talked to the front desk person, and you just say, hey, can I please speak to so-and-so? They'll ask you, what is this regarding? And you'll say, oh, I actually sent them a letter, and I want to follow up on them about their advertising. And then they've got a choice on whether or not they're going to route you through or they're going to take a message, but that's okay because if your physical correspondence has done its job, they're going to be expecting your call or you're going to be top of consciousness for them and they'll be more open to actually talking to you. Now, if you're leaving a message, you pretty much come clean and you say, I sent you this package the other day and I just followed up and I want to talk to you about it, want to see if you got it okay, and have a follow-up conversation. Now, let's say you do get through. What you do is you invoke the name and you say, oh, I was talking with so-and-so at your front desk or the salesperson, and they identified you as the person to talk to. And I just wanted to follow up, have a conversation with you. And then you just start asking open questions. What did you think about the information that I sent you? And you listen to them and you ask more questions. Now, here's a pro tip here. Research them first. If you research them, you can say things like, oh, I noticed you just started your job there. about 6 months ago. Or I noticed that you worked at this other company. You must have a lot of experience that you brought over into this role. Or I noticed that you attempted to do this and you made a post about it. What was the response on it? So the more you know about them, the more you can feed them information and get them comfortable in talking to you. It might weird them out, but guess what? You're cutting through the noise. Now, at that moment in time, they may say, you know what, I appreciate it, but no thanks, don't want it. You're going to say, okay. Other times they're going to say, I do appreciate what you sent to me. Sometimes I've even had CEOs say, you know what, I decided to finally have this conversation with you because you've been persistent reaching out to me and you got my attention. You have 5 minutes, go. That has happened. Now that you're talking to them on the phone, step 5, invite them to the next conversation. You have warmed them up, you've created a connection, you've asked questions, you've listened with empathy, and then you're going to say, I'd love to have a follow-up conversation with you. Do you have some time? I'll give you a demo. Let's talk a little more. I'd love to hear more about your issues, or maybe I could just give you some free advice. Whatever it's going to take to get them to the next conversation, that's going to depend a lot on the state of your product and what you're able to send to them, but you want to take the next steps. Get them to agree to take one next step with you. And if not, you're going to ask them, well, what could we do next? How could I help you? And they'll tell you, send me some more information, or I'm going to set you up with a meeting with someone else. By that time, you have the rapport with them, so that conversation should be fluid, and you should be able to slowly extract more information and get to an action. As I've been saying, you've been testing this whole time, so keep track of your results. Literally put it on a timeline and say, okay, here's what I sent them. Here's when I followed up. Here's what I asked them. Here's the invitation, the call to action for the next meeting. They said yes, 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 and then no. Or they said no, 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 or they just went yes the whole way. This is going to work. I have the high success rate doing this technique. You want to track your results and use a CRM, and you're constantly testing. If you haven't tried 100 different variations to eventually get there, then you don't have enough data to determine whether your system, your process is effective enough. You have to keep testing, and that's part of you figuring out how to do founder-led sales. It's super easy to track this. If you're not going to buy a fancy CRM like Salesforce or Pipedriver or something like that, you're going to use an Excel spreadsheet, sometimes even use Word. You're going to create a table, and you go step 1, step 2, step 3, identify the steps, describe what each one is, and then just put a little note how they responded to each step. Then eventually you're going to look at everything that you've done, make some decisions, do a bit of analysis, and say, all right, we're going to use this. And then what you can do, which is what I did, is hire someone to run the system like a sausage factory or an assembly line. I hired someone who sat in my office, went out, got the magazines, cut out the ads, let me mark them up, printed the letters, customized them, called, said, who do I send this to? Followed up and say, I'd love for you to book an appointment with Ed and have a conversation. And she did all that on clockwork and just did that every single day. And the leads just started rolling in. But it wasn't until I did all the heavy lifting up front to learn how to do founder-led sales with a B2B product. And I learned so much along the way that the feedback that I got from doing these sales calls actually helped me improve my product. And that's called continual improvement. And this is a cycle that you want. You want to be building your product and trying to sell it at the exact same time so you can take that feedback and you create this loop that will make your product even better. And as you add more features and as you advance your product, you can start communicating that. And then it just gets better and better until you snowball and you've got this momentum. And it's like a system, a tap. You can just turn on the tap and the leads come, or you can close off the tap if you got too many, or you can blow it open, create another tap, and just say, we want as many leads as possible. That's what investors are going to want to see from you. So then you might be asking, well, when I get there, how do I close a deal? What do I say? Well, you're in luck. I just happen to have done a video for that very specific thing. You haven't seen it already. Go check it out. I'm going to put it on the screen right now, and you are going to see the next video to watch. I hope that video is helpful as much as this one is. I will see you in the next video.